'Tis the season as we now approach the greatest holiday of all time, in my opinion, Thanksgiving.
You're a big Thanksgiving guy, aren't you, Mike? I see that.
A little bit,
Yeah.
little bit. Thanksgiving Eve, as we're talking here. This is Mic'd Up, presented by Pittsburgh Sports Live and on Pittsburgh Sports Now. I'm Mike Asti. That's Mike Vukovcan. And yes, I am a big Thanksgiving guy. We are now experiencing Thanksgiving and the magic of the holiday. It's about food, family, and football. And this show is going to be about one of those, and that's football, at least on and off the field. What's going on with Pitt? They're ranking right now if they should have star players play or not against Syracuse, since the division is already wrapped up and they will appear in the ACC title game. And what it even means and to the program to have so many up for different awards, but maybe a part of Pitt that has kind of been overlooked this year, because it can't just be one guy, as great as Pickett has been, to get them to this point. And we've experienced Pickett having great games and Pitt not winning. It does take a team effort to win a major conference that Pitt has an opportunity to do in the ACC title game. And then also, of course, the news everyone's been talking about and is well aware of. We have the coverage over there at Nittany Sports Now. Penn State extends James Franklin 10 more years, and this is only a month after he was involved in every single rumor in the country, major jobs at LSU, USC. We've even touched on it here in past shows you can search for, and the way he was answering questions, he was dancing around it, saying, hey, my personal life is mine. It appeared maybe he had his eyes set on going somewhere else, and Penn State hadn't won a game since then, for a while at least, and that maybe changed the tune. We'll see. Penn State looks to end their season on a strong note, but the real conversation is about the future of that program and even some comments that he said about the facilities. So he's extended, but doesn't honestly sound that happy about what's going on at Penn State, as weird as that may sound. So, Mike, to get things started here, Pitt fans have a reason to be thankful this year. They really have a reason to be thankful for Kenny Pickett, for Mark Whipple, for Pat Narduzzi, for this team. And some of those things they are thankful for now, I don't think they ever thought they would be thankful for even a year or so ago, maybe even more recently ago, early on in this season. It's all in front of them now. They have the ACC crown right in front of them. They have that title game in front of them. No matter what happens against Syracuse, they could lose by 40 points. They're going to have a chance at winning the conference. Obviously, that may affect their ranking, though, if they would lose that game. They right now are pretty secure in that top 20 of the college football playoff. They could actually even approach top 15, top 10, et cetera, at the end of the year if they keep on winning and certainly win a conference. Top 10 is not out of the question if they win the ACC and then win a bowl game to finish things off. That'd be great for the program. A loss to Syracuse certainly would hurt that. But at the end of the day, it wouldn't matter for their goals. It appears Pitt is going to go business as usual. Kenny Pickett and company going to play in that game. It's on the road against Syracuse. What are your thoughts there? Pitt has it all wrapped up. Should they be sitting guys because it really doesn't matter for their goals and what they want to win and what they want to do this year? The playoff is out. No matter what they do, they win by 60 in every game. They're not going to have a chance at a national title. Or should Pitt continue business as usual, continue clicking on all cylinders, make sure the rust isn't there, and treat every week as its own individual week, which is how they got in this situation?
Well, I was having this conversation with Alan last week, and we have a difference of opinion on this. I'm of the opinion that if I'm head coach, I don't really care that much about. There's only one thing I care about, and that's winning the ACC title.
Okay,
beating Syracuse and losing in the ACC title game.
Right.
My thought on that is I do not play. There's only two players that I don't play, and those are the stars, Jordan Addison and Kenny Pickett. I just don't see because if those guys get down injured, even if it's not a major injury, if it's just a nagging injury or something that keeps them out the following week, Pitt has no shot to win the ACC title game. So with that,
that's true. I mean, that really is undisputed.
They don't. No, they won't. So I wouldn't play those two. And I know people were, worried about, Pat Narduzzi made it clear yesterday or Monday that he is going to play them.
Yeah.
I know they have, things that they could accomplish as far as program records. They haven't won 10 games in a regular season since 1981.
Right.
There's a lot of things that they could accomplish. However, I think they need to go with their motto all season: "We, not me," and think of this as a team goal here, and it's about winning the ACC conference. If they lose to Syracuse and don't play those guys, I'm sure the pollsters, some of them will recognize the fact that their best two players weren't there.
Sure.
And if they win the ACC title, nobody will remember about Syracuse.
Yeah, it is possible though that the pollsters, it's different than if a player was injured. They may frown upon it because they may not want teams to do that in the future, because then you're hurting the integrity of that game. You're hurting Syracuse in terms of what they're putting together for the fans that are there. So the pollsters could get old school and say, hey, we can't just not move you or move you up despite losing by 20 because everyone sat, because then teams are just going to do this all the time. Not that they wouldn't anyway, but I don't think
I'm not,
that opportunity is there to hurt the ranking.
I agree with you. If Pitt's sitting, 6, 7, 8 guys, I'm talking 2 guys here.
Yeah.
And I think I think anyone realizes Kenny Pickett, if Pat Narduzzi wanted to really sit him, he could use last week's ankle injury against Virginia.
Yeah, and Addison almost didn't play 2 weeks ago. He's been questionable for a while now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Those guys are just too important to everything they do. Pitt's already down 2 guys for the year, probably at wide receiver with Tazier Mack and Jalen Barden. If you lose Addison for just a week, to me, there's just nothing to gain. And I know some people are still worried about nobody over at Pitt, but fans and some people are still thinking about the Heisman and the Davey O'Brien award.
Yeah, is that going to be as being a finalist? Would they hold that against him? And the stats wouldn't be there. He does need to hang on stats.
Yeah, it's a tricky it's a tricky subject, and there's arguments both ways. There's legitimate arguments both ways.
Yeah.
I don't think anything trumps the ACC title.
Yeah, if they get hurt, none of that matters. Right.
Yeah.
If they get hurt, none of that matters. But you could argue, to play devil's advocate here, because I probably wouldn't play them either, but We Not Me could still be getting Pickett to the Heisman as a finalist, because that would help we. So that's not just me. That would help we. He's going to get first round. He's going to get his money, even if he's not a Heisman finalist. That's going to be me. He's already done that for himself. That's happening. But we would be getting him there, getting more coverage, getting more accolades. That hasn't happened for a while for Pitt. They feel like they were snubbed with Larry Fitz.
I think Kenny Pickett
might get there anyway.
I think he's already locked up.
He should be.
With what he's done the last half of the season here, I think he's already locked up an invitation to New York.
Okay.
I don't think that's even.
Yeah.
I don't even think that's in discussion anymore.
And I do feel like winning, it's probably just not going to happen.
No, it's going to go to the Alabama guy or
right. So then if you feel that way, then you can't go anywhere up with him. I mean, what's the difference of being second or third? No one remembers the runner-up or the third guy.
No, it'll be great for the program to get him there. And
right.
To me, there's just very little benefit aside from final win total and final ranking.
I think final ranking is the only other argument more than win total, because you mentioned since 1981, Pitt hasn't had a 10-win season. This could be the best ranking Pitt's had in an absurd amount of time, certainly for Narduzzi. Is that a difference if Pitt finishes the year ranked 7th or ranked 12th?
No, it doesn't. I don't care about that. I want to do everything I can to make sure my marquee players are there for the biggest game of the year.
Yeah.
The last time Pitt was on national TV for the ACC title game, didn't look good.
No.
For the program. They got boat raced by Clemson.
Yeah.
This game, whoever they play, NC State, Wake Forest, will it'll be a competitive game, and it'll be an exciting game. It'll be a game that fans, potential recruits will see, quarterbacks out there, people in the offense, wide receivers playing in this offense, stuff like that. If those two guys aren't there, all of it's gone. You want to win when you're in a position to win an ACC championship. Obviously, something this program has never done. You do everything you can to make sure that happens, and it all starts with number 8.
Yeah, and honestly, not even just the ACC, but we talked about as well in past shows, the last time Pitt was in a major bowl game of this caliber back in 2004 when they got in that BCS, I believe it was the Fiesta Bowl against Utah. They got in because they won the Big East, but that was a year before WVU got going that it was almost like they won it by default and they were barely in the top 25. Yes. This would be the most definitive conference championship for Pitt since Johnny Majors. I mean, this would be, you couldn't dispute this one. There could certainly be opposing fans that could say 2004, they ranked 24th in the country. What does that do for you? And then they got boat raced. There's nothing anyone could argue about this season if they win. Again, it's still a risk that if you lose the ACC title game, obviously it's been a nice year. It's been a great year for Pitt, but that would take something away. There'd be some luster lost because with this offense, you feel like you should win, even though you're facing a great team. And if you lose it because Kenny Pickett breaks his leg against Syracuse, I'm sure that's going to stick in Pitt's craw for 50 years. I don't know if they're ever, I mean, that's going to be something people are never going to get over. Yeah. That's going to be hard to even talk about. I'll knock on wood for Pitt here with that comment. I do want to ask you as well, many Pitt star players here are vying for significant awards. We always talk Kenny Pickett and the Heisman, but it's well beyond that with Addison. Even Mark Whipple as an offensive coordinator is up for significant awards. Pat Narduzzi as well as a head coach. We know the success of Pitt stars, of Pickett, Addison, even going down to Vincent Davis and Hammond Jr. potentially, who maybe are part of this answer. We know Mark Whipple and what he's done, finally getting some national respect even more than maybe he's had at Pitt, even though he had it prior in his career. We know Narduzzi silencing some doubters, but Pitt would not be in this situation without an overall team effort. And parts of this team have had to improve. Parts of this team were the problem when Pitt had lost games. Miami, Western Michigan, the defense collapsed in those games. No matter what Pickett did, it didn't matter. What would you say is maybe an unsung part of this team to allow them to win a conference championship? Because for a while this year, many were thinking, oh, man, we're going to have a Heisman candidate and still lose 4 or 5 games because the rest of the team's not good enough. But they got better. They got good enough. And they made it where he wasn't going to have to be in a situation where Kenny Pickett deserved better at the end of the year.
I'm going to say that because I know that I thought this way, and I know a lot of other people thought this way, and it's something I've harped on for a couple of years, is I think Pitt's finally, however it's happened, they've developed a sneaky good running game toward the end of the season.
I think that's the answer.
About halfway during the season, up until game 5, 6, there were still questions about, man, they still can't run the ball, and why can't they run? And then all of a sudden, you look at the end of the season here, and you got Abanaconda, you got Hammond, and you got Davis. All those guys are averaging close to 5 yards a carry. Abanaconda is averaging 5.3. Same with Hammond.
It's been by committee, really, too.
And Vincent Davis is 4.1. When you got your backs averaging 4 yards a carry, I'm sure some of it is because defenses are, maybe a little bit worried about the pass, but that doesn't matter. It's a team, and it's all a result of the one area of the team is benefiting from the other.
Mm-hmm.
Pitt's running game looks solid now, and the exciting thing for I'm sure Narduzzi and Whipple and the program is the fact that all 3 of those guys are scheduled to return next year. Hammond, Abanaconda.
Yeah. You won't have Pickett, but you will have them. Right?
Yeah. Davis will be a senior. Hammond and Abanaconda are sophomores and freshmen. So you got this 3-headed monster back with the running game next year. Hammond just looks like a beast. him and Abanaconda look like a really scary duo as far as the type of. It's kind of funny. Hammond looks like he's smaller, but he's physical, and Abanaconda could just run past you.
Yeah,
it's a
really thunder and lightning. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really solid. And Daniel Carter has come in and kind of done the dirty work of being he came in as a 4-star running back from Florida, and people thought he was going to be the running back of the future. He's only a sophomore, but he's kind of developed now as the talented fullback in their offense. So they got a loaded backfield here, and nobody's graduating. Everyone's going to be back next year. And I think that part of their team maybe necessarily isn't getting the attention just because of, all the attention your quarterback, no matter what team always gets. When you have a good quarterback, that's all anyone ever talks about. But I think people should remember, Pitt fans should remember, and they start worrying about next year. And, I've already heard Pickett won't be there. And I realize, we all know what that's going to mean. But this cupboard is hardly going to be bare next year for talent next year.
Yeah, and I do also think that you're going to, when you have a quarterback throwing for 300 plus yards, not only is he the quarterback on a winning team, but 300 plus yards, all those gaudy stats, he's going to get all the accolades and all the praise. It just comes with being a quarterback. But we've mentioned this before, that the one thing that was holding Pitt back was the running game from really being a good team. And I'd imagine if you ask Pickett as well, it's easier for him to operate when there's a running game there. He was still putting up yards without the running game, but now the defense has to worry about what's going on the ground. They can't just assume it's going to be 50 passes from Pickett every night, or else they're going to be able to have success when Pitt tries to run. And to have 3 different backs to have success. We've seen a 100-yard game from Hammond. We've seen a 100-yard game from Vincent Davis. We've seen a 100-yard game from Anaconda. So, I mean, like, it's ridiculous to have those 3. It almost the only, you don't want to have anything bad happen with all of this, but the only negative is eventually one of those 3 guys are going to, I want more touches. I want more playing time, but you have 2 of them coming back after next year. So it almost seems like that possible symmetry for the running backs.
Well, one thing is
helping the O-line too.
But Abanaconda didn't play in the second half last week. He had a minor injury that he'll be able to play this week.
Right.
But to not risk that, Narduzzi just sat him the second half because he knew he had those other guys on.
And you could do that against Syracuse. We talked about earlier on who's you're going to rest. If you're going to start Pickett and Addison, maybe you at least don't start him because of the recent injury. You don't want to risk him, although you have others in the backup. And I think the only thing to mention here for Pitt in terms of another unsung part is the offensive line. That's allowed these running backs to have success. That's also helped Pickett. That was a problem earlier in the year as well. So anytime you mention running back success, running game success, you have to mention the offensive line, quarterback and running success. You got to mention the O-line. They also have really, really improved, which has allowed this team to operate on offense, with such consistency that they're the best in the country.
Yeah, and I also want to give Narduzzi some credit here.
Sure.
For, I think early on, and I think this is another sign of his development as a head coach, is in that I think early on in his career, there were some whispers and people talking that he was reliant too much on his seniors and was hesitant to go with freshmen, especially true freshmen, even if they were talented.
Not this
back with Paris Ford. Yeah. And back then that, he's always going to rely on the senior over the freshman. We're seeing some development with him in that he's playing some freshmen in high stakes situations here, meaning Rodney Hammond, we mentioned him, tight end Gavin Bartholomew, who's going to be a star here at Pitt within the next couple of years. He's a true freshman. You have Jalen Barden, who basically is a redshirt freshman. Rashad, he's shown the willingness, I'd say for the most in his career, of sliding some young players, inexperienced players, into some high stakes situations here. And I don't think that's something that he would have done the first few years of his coaching career.
Yeah.
Which shows signs that he's growing and he's developing as a head coach. I think a lot of times people forget that about him, that this is his first job. So hats off to him for that, for not, sticking with the seniors.
Yeah, he's found a season that they can always point to. I mean, he really got it done this year. He had to quiet doubters even in this individual season. I think he's matured even how he's dealt with everything. So I think everything a part of him has matured in this season. Obviously, Pickett has matured as a quarterback, as a man. It's a beautiful thing. Pitt fans have a lot to be thankful for again there. And of course, a lot more to discuss, a lot more to cover going into that ACC title game. Many of us will be there. Mike, Allen, we're going to have Mitchell Northam, a stringer of ours, is there. George will be there. So we got a lot of coverage here.
Stick with us next week. We got a lot of stuff for you Pitt fans. We're trying to work out something for game day. Hopefully we'll announce it next week, but we'll be down in Charlotte as a team. And as we've shown you for the last 6 years, nobody in Pittsburgh will have Pitt covered as extensively and better than Pittsburgh Sports Now.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, post-game shows will happen as well here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Now, to wrap things up, Pitt fans, you can maybe also enjoy this conversation because there are some that believe a decision was made that will actually be helping Pitt and other programs, since it's not exactly been the way this season for Penn State fans that they want. And also there's some Penn State fans who might kind of be rolling their eyes right now. Penn State extends James Franklin 10 more years. Not to say it's been bad when he's been there. There have been some great moments. There have been some solid seasons. The expectations are even higher at Penn State than they would be at a Pitt or West Virginia. They want to win the Big Ten or at least vie for it every year. This year, they're lucky to be in the top 4, even in their conference. They had that losing streak in the middle of the season. He was rumored to be going elsewhere, decided not to. They kept on losing. They want to finish the season strong, but really what does it matter? And he also mentioned in his press conference just yesterday, talking about the extension, that, hey, we also need better facilities. We need to win 364 beyond the game that we're playing. It was weird. He was calling shots at the administration despite signing a 10-year deal. Man, I'd like to be a fly on the wall for what's happening in Happy Valley right now, because it appears that he is back, but I'm not so sure if it isn't he's back because Penn State is okay with him and didn't feel they could get any better, or what's going on. And he realized that, okay, I can't get elsewhere because these teams aren't as interested in me off the losing streak. It doesn't appear champagne's being popped in this 10-year deal, but that's the case right now. And we also know, Mike, the way college sports works, if he just sucks up the joint, he could be out 2 years into this 10-year extension. I mean, obviously there's a buyout. There's a lot of money there. You want him longer, obviously, if you sign this deal, but there's no guarantee he'll be there for the 10 years. Was this a good decision for Penn State? And was this a good decision for James Franklin individually? Because we also talked before that if you can't win the conference, if you can't get over Ohio State for his legacy, for his personal well-being, maybe he's actually better served to try something else. Even if he fails elsewhere, try something else. But that's not the case. He's going to keep on trying at Penn State, needing more, wanting more facility-wise for recruiting. He kind of put the blame there on recruiting, even though he's actually recruited well, and then these seasons haven't gone the way they wanted.
Yeah, to answer your first question, I think it's a good deal for both sides. I know some people, the way things are gone the last 2 years, I believe they're 11-9 in their last 20 games. That doesn't scream for.
Last year was really bad.
Yeah, for a guy getting a 10-year, what was it, $80 million extension or something? Yeah. 70, 80 million. That doesn't. Those numbers you don't.
I mean, per year, it's not that much of a bump, but it's a lot of money in a lot of years.
But I think it's Penn State. No matter, Penn State is going to be their bugaboo. And they have to hope that they believe that obviously Franklin's the guy for this. Can they ever be better than Ohio State and
Michigan?
In Michigan, but I think this is. Let's see Harbaugh do this a couple.
Yeah,
of
years. Right. Sure.
I think the big thing is Ohio State. That's the only thing, because Wisconsin, I think they're still. I think they're on par with Wisconsin. I think they beat them. They finished with a lot of the same records.
I think recruiting wise, a lot of kids that could choose between any of those 4 or 5 Big Ten schools that would pick Penn State over a lot of the others.
If you're talking recruiting, it's Penn State. Yeah, if you're talking recruiting,
it's Ohio State.
it's Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State battling those other schools.
Right. Geographically, right.
Yeah, and Penn State realized. I'm sure the Mel Tucker contract with Michigan State didn't help out Penn State as far as it definitely helped out Franklin as far as his this guy does it for 1 year there,
right?
And their schools, and their schools giving him a ridiculous contract, which I think they're going to end up regretting.
Probably.
But it's the cost of doing business in college football today. This is big business. And
were you at all surprised it was 10 years, or is that because of what his counterpart in the game coming up at Michigan State got, that they had to match that? Franklin has had special years, even though not this year.
If I'm Penn State, I like the 10 years because I think the first 4 or 5 of it, the buyout years are pretty heavy. And then after that, it goes down to a very manageable number that he can get out. I'm surprised that James Franklin would want to sign something that long, because let's be honest, in the last few years, this isn't the first time that he's
every year.
Every year. Yeah, his name is out there for all these jobs, and he always seems to. And hats off to him and his agent for being able to do this, because he has the Penn State administration by the.
Apparently he does. Yeah.
I'm surprised that he'd want to quiet it, because once you get a 10-year extension, that's it. There's not going to be any more renegotiations after 1 or 2 years.
You mentioned him having Penn State by the.
I don't understand why he'd want to hamstring himself. It's pretty ridiculous to say when you're talking about that amount of money, but 10 years is just a long time to not be able to have any
right. It seemed like he's flirted with other schools. I mean, we don't know for sure, but it seems like there was some, unless he's really a master of manipulation, as some have argued, in that his weird comments this year have just been trying to get more money in years out of Penn State. Maybe he never wanted to leave, because he did mention that these other jobs are very far. It's not like you're going from Pitt to West Virginia or to Penn State or Ohio State. He would have had to bring his family, the kids in school, 3,000 miles away, or even LSU's not that close. So maybe he always wanted to stay, because the other jobs that were interested in him never were next door. It was always far. And maybe he just manipulated himself into all these years and money, and who knows? I mean, maybe he did. I do want to ask you here. You mentioned that he has Penn State by the gonads, and he really does when you get that long of a deal. And think of this, and I understand maybe why they would do it, but not often in sports ever do you have a guy who's had back-to-back, let's call them bad years. They're bad. Certainly last year was. You maybe could blame COVID, but it's bad again. And then all of a sudden gets a 10-year deal. I mean, it's weird to say for Michigan State to be offering that, but at least it's coming off a really special, great top 10 season. Not the case for Penn State. Their best years are now 2, 3, 4 years behind them. Is it weird that he would have them by the gonads? Is it possible for Penn State to do better than him and they're settling for him? Or do you think there's some realization in themselves? Because we always talk about this as well. If they would not lock Franklin up, and then he would say to them, hey, if you don't extend me for so many years, I'm going to go elsewhere, or something like that. He still has cachet to go elsewhere. Then they would be in a situation where they have to start all over again, and they don't want to do that. Like, can they do better than James Franklin is the question.
No, Penn State. I don't think. I don't know.
Some would argue it's a top 10 marquee brand name.
I think Penn State's an easy job to recruit at. I don't think it's an easy job to coach at.
Okay.
Just because their conference is the hardest conference.
It is. Well,
I
besides
think
the
about
SEC.
Maybe. Yeah. It's harder. Their division, the Big Ten, whatever the name of their division is.
Yeah.
Whoever thought, and I was thinking about this when I was looking at the standings a couple weeks
especially
ago.
This year.
It's stupid how many good teams are in that thing compared to Wisconsin's division, which the parity, it's not even there. You have 4 or 5 legitimate teams. That's hard.
Right.
And
no, you're right.
I think a lot of people could recruit at Penn State. Let's. I think Penn State's looking at the totality of this thing. James Franklin's had some double-digit wins,
right? Yeah,
seasons. He's not a bad coach.
No.
Is he maybe?
It's underachieving maybe for their expectations.
Maybe the reputation is maybe more than what he does, but he has a lot of positive things that he brings to a program, and he's shown the ability to recruit.
Sure,
I think he's a good face for the program.
He's an intelligent guy. He's a respectful guy. You don't have to worry he's going to get arrested or anything crazy.
James Franklin's a good. If you're picking guys that you want to run your program, as far as
he's a leader of men,
qualities that a guy brings, James Franklin checks off most of the boxes. I just think that the expectations for the Penn State job and where they are sometimes get in the way and maybe cloud people's opinion of what he's actually accomplished. If he goes to the Pac-12, that's a terrible conference. Can he do better? Sure, but
he could win the conference though at USC. That's a marquee job. And if you win, look what happens with Oregon this year. They were a top 10 team before losing to Utah. If you do that at USC, they're a top 4 or 5 team. They love that brand name.
But if he does that, I don't think that is going to make him a better coach.
No. It just might get him in the playoff, maybe.
Yeah, he's doing it because he's in a worse conference.
Right. Sure.
As weird as that says, I don't think accomplishing it. Now, if you do that in the SEC with LSU, I'll tip my hat off to you.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. The only job that I ever saw that made sense for him, for legacy, or if he even cares about that, is USC. That was it.
Yeah,
Florida,
and I
didn't make.
And
sense.
if I were him, LSU. I think if he went to LSU, he would have been fired in 3 years. Look what they fired, a guy who won the national championship 2 years ago, and the fans don't like him. They're not going to do anything nice. They hate him. It's freaking believable.
Yeah, USC was the only job. USC was the only job that made sense for him. You could make a case that if he'd want to go there, because then he could be a playoff team.
I think if he wants to win a national championship, he needs to go to USC, because if they have a 1-loss year, look at Oregon again. The committee loves the brand names. They love USC. If you go with 1 or 2 losses and win the Pac-12, they're going to find a way to crawl you in there, whether it's fair or not. And once you're in, you have a chance. Yeah. That's not going to happen at Penn State. You got to beat Ohio State every now and then. You got to beat Michigan every now and then. You got to win the conference every now and then. They're bumping 2 SEC teams. Probably will get in the playoff this year. Bama beats Georgia. They're not going to be doing that for the Big Ten this year. It's rough. I mean, it's tough. It's arguably a tougher conference with less respect nationally than the SEC. So that makes it hard for you. That's just the case.
But I just think Penn State, in the end, they need to look big, and I think they do. I think they've done this as an administration. I'm speaking to fans here. I think they need to think big picture and don't always think that it's better, because you can go out there and try to get some former alumni, or go out there and get a Greg Schiano, or whoever you want to try to bring in there, a former Penn State person, to do that job and think he's going to do better. And then 1 or 2 years in, you'll realize he's not James Franklin. James Franklin.
You could do worse. Absolutely.
James Franklin has some warts to him as far as the overall resume, but he has a hell of a lot more positives that he brings to a program than negatives. And people always try to find what's wrong, but I think they should look at what's right. And I think he does. I think he's about as good as you can get for the face of a program.
He is, and if they weren't going to do this, but if they fired him, you'd be starting at square one. You'd lose all your recruits. We always talk about it's different to fire a college coach than a pro coach, because you're losing a lot. You still have the same roster if you fire a pro coach, because they're contractually obligated unless you trade them or they complain. But a recruit could say, I went to play for Franklin. I don't know who the hell this guy is. So that would be that could be potentially a catastrophe. And if you're giving somebody 10 years off 1 10-win season, Franklin, he has 2 at least. So, I mean, it's years ago. 3. He might have 3. Yeah.
3.
And he's flirted with it. He's been in big bowl games, and you just don't know. It can happen. If Sean Clifford didn't get hurt, maybe their season doesn't unravel. Yeah, they lost several more games, but that's the quarterback getting hurt that was playing well. Maybe they win that. He doesn't get hurt, and they get motivated to do more. you don't know. I mean, he's also kept the team afloat. They were competitive against Michigan despite having their season really be for nothing. So that's all got to go to Franklin. You listen to these kids; they feel like they're playing for the national title still, which isn't the case. I wouldn't be motivated if I were them, but they are. So that'll do it for this edition of the show. Enjoy your Thanksgiving, because I am going to. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. Thankful for what you're thankful for. And that'll be it for this holiday edition of the show. We'll be back at it next week at some point here. And of course, Pitt does have the ACC Championship in front of them, so we have tons of coverage for that. For Mike Vukovcan and Mike Asti here, Pittsburgh Sports Live.